Don't defy me, you lowly subcontractor. The contract is terminated.
William, the manager from the company we've been dealing with since my father's time, said disdainfully. It seems he was quite upset because I didn't immediately say yes. However, no matter how big the company, I can't accept these terms. No matter how large Frederick Construction is, I'm still the president of Cruise Bolts. I have to reject unreasonable offers for the sake of my employees.
We've favored you since your father's time.
William glared at me as he said this, but I met his gaze without looking away. My name is Tom Cruise, 38 years old. I became the third president of Cruise Bolts after my father passed away suddenly. Cruise Bolts manufactures machine parts like screws and bolts as a subcontractor for large companies. The cruise store, which my grandfather started, was incorporated during my father's time and has continued as Cruise Bolts to this day. Although it's a small to medium-sized company, the parts from Cruise Bolts have a good reputation, and we have transactions with several large companies. Since my generation took over, Cruise Bolts' commitment to dealing with parts with sincerity remains strong. Besides the bolts in our company name, we handle various machine parts and even create custom parts to meet customer requests. Though we mainly produce screws and bolts, their shapes vary depending on the machinery they're used for, requiring flexible responses. Unlike the screws and bolts used in daily life, some orders are for parts that only fit specific machines. Cruise Bolts is a company that listens to each customer's detailed requirements and manufactures parts accordingly. Without damaging the trust built by my grandfather and father, I aim to take on new challenges in my generation. I joined Cruise Bolts right after graduating college to learn my father's work. I've liked the parts Cruise Bolts make since I was a child. It was a natural step for me to join Cruise Bolts after graduation. I thought I had plenty of time to learn from my father. His sudden passing was a shock to me. There might have been resistance to my appointment as president, but those concerns turned out to be unfounded. Starting from the ground up, like any new employee, might have helped. By being open, I gained the affection of our craftsman employees. It seems my desire to protect the company my grandfather and father cherished came through. My sudden rise to president was accepted because of my consistent dedication to work. I aim not only to uphold the traditions inherited from my grandfather and father, but also to take on new endeavors. By maintaining a culture of open communication, even new employees can work freely. This environment fosters new ideas and earns us high marks for developing specialized parts. Cruise Bolts has further solidified its reputation as a company that can handle new machine parts from clients. Our smooth progress is thanks to our hardworking employees. Grateful in my heart, I open my computer to check today's schedule. Projects continuing from last year are on track. This one is, yes, going well. As I murmured this while reviewing reports from my team members, a secretary entered the president's office, looking apologetic. Cruise Bolts has an open-door policy for the president's office. I always tell everyone to come in anytime, not just for consultations, but also for casual chats. This reflects my desire to prioritize daily communication. That's why the apologetic look on the employee's face caught my attention. What's up? I stopped working and looked at the employee, who hesitantly mentioned a visitor. Thinking about who it could be to cause such a reaction, one face came to mind. Is it William from Frederick Construction? The employee nodded with an awkward expression. I couldn't help but sigh and smile wryly. Frederick Construction is a prime contractor we've dealt with since my grandfather's time, and is the industry's largest company. William has been in charge of our account since joining Frederick Construction, so we've known each other for a long time. Because of this, William is disliked for his high-handed attitude when visiting us. However, he's completely unaware of this and often makes unfunny jokes that kill the mood. William doesn't realize he's treated with care and respect because he's a manager at Frederick Construction. Because of this, many employees look gloomy when they see William's name on the appointment list. Is he in the reception room? Thanks. Saying this, I checked the schedule on my computer to see if there was an appointment. As I thought, William's name wasn't there. Puzzled, I head to the reception room. The only reasons he'd come without an appointment must be an urgent matter or some trouble. Normally, a designated employee would handle this, but all our salespeople are out. Since I became the president, meetings with William have been handled by our sales team. But in this situation, I have no choice but to meet him myself. Sorry to keep you waiting, I say as I enter the reception room, finding William lounging on the sofa.
Hey.
He greets me with a raised hand, not even bothering to stand up. While it's true our company is a subcontractor for Frederick Construction, this behavior is excessively rude. In this unbelievable situation, I look around and make eye contact with a woman sitting next to William. She stands up and greeted sincerely. I don't recognize her face. She must be a new employee.
Nice to meet you. I'm Cameron Diaz.
She hands me her business card with a polite greeting, and I offer mine in return.
Finished with the card exchange. This woman here is our newbie. I thought I'd show her how we work today.
William says with a grin, patting Cameron's shoulder. When his hand touched her shoulder, her face seemed to contort slightly. Though her reaction concerned me, asking about the purpose of their visit took priority. What brings you here today? Your name wasn't on the schedule. William's response was shocking, as if he couldn't believe my question.
A lowly subcontractor like you. No appointment?
His unbelievable statement made me freeze. Cameron, sitting beside him, also seemed taken aback.
You should be grateful that the great Frederick Construction graced you with our presence.
William's outrageous remark made me feel dizzy. Coming without an appointment and acting so arrogantly, even as a manager of a major company, was beyond common sense. During my time handling sales, every company, big or small, treated us courteously. Such rudeness and lack of common decency must be Frederick Construction's corporate culture. No, that's not right. Cameron, sitting next to him, looked just as incredulous. Even as a newcomer, she was shocked, indicating it wasn't the company culture. I've always left dealing with William to our sales team and rarely spoke with him directly. I knew our employees disliked him, but I didn't realize he was this disrespectful. I decided to get him out of here quickly, so I moved the conversation along. So, may I ask what your business is?
What? No gratitude or sincerity? Oh, can you get this coffee replaced?
I left the room to get coffee. I could have ordered it through the intercom, but I needed to cool down. Got a minute? While ordering the coffee, I asked if William always behaved like that. I was told he's usually bad, but not that bad, which made me realize something. He wanted to look good in front of the newbie. He often brags to our female employees too, but it's all in the wrong direction. The female employees, and probably Cameron, dislike him. As I carried the coffee for the three of us, I sighed, wondering what to do. Sorry for the wait.
You're late, hey.
William was still lounging arrogantly. He had no dignity as a manager at Frederick Construction.
Damn. Having the president serve coffee. Aren't the female employees looking down on you?
As he kept making rude comments with a grin, Cameron shrank apologetically.
Cameron, don't be so tense.
He tried to pat her shoulder while drinking coffee, but this time Cameron smoothly avoided his hand. William made a surprised face, but since she did it naturally, he didn't seem to mind. I thought, Cameron really dislikes William too, but I kept my thoughts to myself and continued the conversation. So, what brings you here?
Well, about that.
William suddenly started talking about how popular he was at a bar last night. What on earth did this old man come here for? I was baffled about how to respond. I thought, he's here for work, right? But then I noticed his eyes were moving oddly. Whenever he talked about women at the bar, he glanced at Cameron. He was trying to show how popular and capable he was. He brought her along to boast about how great he was. Cameron, obviously tired of his stories, wasn't listening at all. It's a pity she ended up with such a lousy boss, despite joining a top company like Frederick Construction. Feeling sorry for her, I watched as William, sensing her lack of interest, seemed to lose his enthusiasm for the story.
Actually,
Finally getting to business, William surprised me again. No, it was more exasperation than surprise.
about the parts you're delivering now. Can you lower the price a bit?
The parts he mentioned have been delivered since my father's time, and their price was set by the previous manager and my father. They hit it off and agreed on the current price. They had a great rapport, so my father decided to offer them at a very tight margin. William was present at the signing of the contract before his promotion, so he should know the history. That price was agreed upon because of the previous manager. Since my tenure began, we've kept the price unchanged to honor my father. Being asked to lower it further almost made my brain freeze. I remembered my father hesitatingly saying he disliked William. He mentioned that William lacked professional courtesy. The William in front of me indeed lacked any consideration. I don't quite understand what you mean. As I tried to respond calmly, William made another outrageous comment.
You became president without knowing anything because you're young.
William, that's too rude.
Cameron interjected, unable to hold back. She had much more sense than him.
Newbies shouldn't interrupt. I'm teaching the new president about the real world.
A moment ago, he wanted her to watch him, but now he was angry at being contradicted. Cameron seemed about to be crushed by his unjust anger.
We gave you new orders recently, so you can lower the price on the existing parts.
I calmly rejected William's unreasonable demand. That's not possible.
Huh?
William was momentarily stunned, then shouted.
Do you even know what you're saying?
He ranted about not being grateful for his concessions.
Your father would have lowered it immediately.
With all due respect, this price is the minimum and a service price considering past dealings.
How dare you talk about service prices without knowing business?
He tried to show off in front of Cameron by easily changing the price, but it backfired. Fueling his anger, he berated me, calling me unfit to be president. We're delivering the new parts at the minimum price due to our relationship. I stood firm, saying no further discounts were possible. Though newly appointed, a wrong decision on my part could affect the future of all our employees. I might lack the experience compared to my father and grandfather, but the livelihoods of our employees depend on me. Cruise Bolts, although a small business, takes pride in producing machine parts. Lowering the price further would damage that pride, and I cannot give in to William's demands. Thinking this, I glared back at William, making him flinch a bit.
Don't defy me, you lowly subcontractor. The contract is terminated.
He threatened further. His despicable behavior almost made me explode.
Didn't your father teach you to treat my words as the president's words?
William, that's not right.
Didn't I tell you to shut up, rookie? You clueless idiot.
Cameron tried to intervene again, but William's harsh rebuke, which seemed to deny her humanity, made her tear up and fall silent. The contract termination is fine with us.
What? Do you understand what you're saying?
I do. We don't want to work with an unreasonable company. I told him.
Without our contract, your small company will go under in no time.
Don't worry. We won't compromise our pride to work with your company.
You'll regret this, young punk.
William threatened. We won't be seeing each other again. I responded firmly, not backing down. The negotiation for a price cut, which William assumed would go smoothly, fell apart, and he left, yelling. Cameron apologized deeply to me, and I responded with a smile to show I didn't mind. After William and Cameron left, I murmured alone in the now silent reception room. Who will regret it more, I wonder? I then started planning our future dealings without Frederick Construction. As I was thinking in the now quiet reception room, the door opened. The commotion had probably been overheard. Soon after William left, Kevin from sales popped his head in.
Tom, can we talk?
I can't let the employees feel uneasy. I switched my mindset and smiled at Kevin. A few weeks passed since William's outburst, and it was now the next month. We hadn't made any deliveries to Frederick Construction since last month. I expected it to continue this month. As I was reviewing this month's tasks in the office, my company phone kept vibrating. It showed Frederick Construction, but the contract was terminated. There should be no reason for them to call, as there were no issues with the deliveries 2 months ago. Remembering William's rude behavior, I decided to ignore the call. However, the phone wouldn't stop vibrating. It started ringing again the moment it stopped, incessantly. They were going to keep calling until I answered. Reluctantly, I picked up the phone. Hello?
We're renewing the contract. Deliver today.
As expected, it was William. The very person who had declared the contract terminated was now demanding this. I reminded him that he was the one who cut the contract last month, interrupted his ranting, and hung up the phone. For a while, my phone kept vibrating. Then it seemed to stop, or so I thought. It started vibrating again. No matter how many times he calls, my answer will be the same. Unable to work, I tapped the call button again and heard a different voice this time.
What are you trying to pull here?
It was Fred, the president from Frederick Construction, speaking aggressively. Fred had inherited the company from his parents and had turned it into the industry's largest firm in one generation. Because of this, his words were always filled with confidence and a bit of intimidation, which made me uncomfortable. I respected his business acumen, but I didn't like his heavy-handed style. This is my personal opinion, but neither my grandfather nor father were like that, which made me feel this way even more. Suddenly asking what I'm trying to pull, I don't understand. Confused, I tried to respond. Why is a company we severed ties with calling now? The last time I spoke with Fred directly was at my inauguration as president. He had congratulated me with a smile then. It was William who ended the contract, so I didn't understand why Fred was furious. He must have thought I was playing dumb.
It's about last month's delivery. Now, do you understand?
He sighed and spoke as if spitting out the words. That only confused me more. Taking my silence as agreement, Fred continued pressing.
Deliver the ordered items immediately. Then come and explain the delay.
Speaking as if addressing a team member angered me. Wait, what ordered items are you talking about? The deliveries for the month before last are complete, I said, puzzled, and his excited voice blared through my phone, making me pull it away from my ear.
What nonsense are you talking about? It's last month's. Stop pretending.
He continued ranting, asking if I intended to disgrace my father's name and accusing me of ignoring William. His unreasonable words made me angry, but I remained calm and said, Our deliveries to your company ended the month before last. William informed me of the contract termination last month.
What nonsense. You ignored Williams.
Fred trailed off. He seemed to realize something was wrong. Though not likable, he had common sense as a business owner. It appeared Fred wasn't informed by William about the termination of our contract. He must have asked William when he noticed the lack of deliveries from cruise bolts. Knowing William, he probably lied, saying deliveries were delayed and that I was ignoring him. That's why he called demanding delivery today. What a pathetic man. He acts tough with his team members and women, but grovels to superiors. He likely ran to the president after failing to handle me. I finally realized why Fred was giving me a lecture over the phone.
Could you please explain the details about last month's delivery?
Fred still spoke in a condescending tone, but I ignored it and explained what had happened. I told him how William had shown up without an appointment, brought a newbie, and demanded an unreasonable price cut. When I refused, he threatened to terminate the contract, so I agreed.
So, the contract with your company is already over.
Even Fred seemed shocked. His tone was courteous, instead of his usual dismissive terms. My father used to laugh, saying Fred was old-fashioned that way. I added that Cameron, who was present at the time, could confirm my story. She was also a victim in a way, but she witnessed William's actions. Fred should hear about William's behavior from her. It's tough for a newbie to be called by an overbearing boss, but it couldn't be helped. After listening to my explanation, Fred apologized for the trouble. After his apology, he requested that we deliver last month's order immediately, to which I promptly replied, "That's not possible." Fred seemed irritated. He probably still felt superior in some way.
We are apologizing here.
Despite the mess his employee caused, he still acted high and mighty. I responded, "We signed a contract with your rival company for 10 times the price, so it's impossible." Fred was speechless as I explained the contract with Simpson's Construction. The parts we had supplied to Frederick Construction were fortunately compatible with many machines. After William left in a huff, Kevin from sales made a proposal.
If our contract with Frederick Construction is over, can we sign with this company?
Kevin suggested Simpson's Construction, a longtime rival of Frederick Construction. Simpson's Construction had been interested in our machine parts for a long time, but my father had declined their offers. He valued our long-standing relationship with Frederick Construction and didn't want to break that bond. However, Simpson's Construction had always highly evaluated cruise bolts parts. Kevin said they had consistently expressed their desire to sign a contract whenever they met. When Kevin returned from his sales rounds, William was causing a commotion. Sensing an opportunity, Kevin suggested we pursue a contract with Simpson's Construction. Unfortunately, the parts Simpson's Construction needed were the same ones William had terminated. We immediately signed a contract with Simpson's Construction and delivered all of last month's order to them. At 10 times the price we had with Frederick Construction, they recognized the value of our work. After inspecting the delivered parts, Simpson's Construction even said the tenfold price was a bargain. They praised the precision and care in our work, saying it was rare to see such quality. Upon returning from Simpson's Construction, Kevin burst into the president's office, his cheeks flushed with excitement. As he recounted what they had said, I found myself tearing up. I was delighted with the high evaluation of cruise bolts. The contract with Simpson's Construction wasn't made because we were dazzled by the tenfold price. Nor was it to spite Frederick Construction. It was a proud contract, made on equal terms, based on a fair evaluation. After explaining this, Fred murmured, "I see." The intimidating tone in Fred's voice was gone.
I was puzzled when I heard that deliveries from cruise bolts were delayed.
He explained that cruise bolts had never been late in all the years we had done business. So when he heard there were no deliveries, he thought there must have been a mistake. He immediately called on William to find out why the deliveries hadn't been made. William claimed there had been no contact from cruise bolts and that he would check right away. When he mentioned our company, he sensed something was off with William, but he couldn't believe that someone at the manager level would lie. He brushed aside the momentary doubt and waited for William's report. When William returned, he reported that cruise bolts had ignored them. He said he called multiple times, but I was pretending to be out, and the employees couldn't handle calls properly. He even claimed we had become complacent due to our long contract, and that I had demanded a price increase during his last visit. Since Fred, who had looked down on cruise bolts, trusted William's story, he called me in a state of agitation, having lost his composure. When I didn't answer the phone, he became even angrier, thinking William was right. He became increasingly agitated as he kept calling over and over. As his anger peaked, I finally answered, causing him to explode. Understanding this, I realized why Fred had been so combative. I explained that I hadn't answered, because I mistook the calls for more unreasonable demands from William. Fred seemed to understand my explanation. He ended the call, saying he would visit to explain in person later. Relieved the conversation with Fred was over, I sighed deeply. The contract with Simpson's Construction boosted my confidence, showing how undervalued we were by Frederick Construction. I vowed to cherish our current contracts while seeking new opportunities. For that, we must continue honing our skills daily. After the call, I exchanged a look with Kevin. He nodded firmly and headed out for his rounds. I vowed to make cruise bolts, blessed with good employees, shine even brighter. The day after my conversation with Fred, my desk phone rang.
May I visit with William and Cameron? Is there a convenient time?
The language was unlike anything I had ever heard from Fred. Even the female employee who first answered the call was shocked by the change in tone. Fred's way of speaking had changed drastically, to the point where it was unrecognizable from before. It seemed the situation with William had hit him hard. I had my employee give him an available time.
I deeply apologize for this situation.
As soon as I opened the door to the reception room, Fred stood up quickly and apologized. Cameron also stood up and apologized deeply, just like Fred. Feeling that Cameron wasn't at fault, I looked past her at William. The usual arrogant and shiny-faced William wasn't there. In just one day, he looked lifeless, his gaze unfocused. He just stood there, silently watching Fred and Cameron apologize deeply. Fred quickly noticed where I was looking.
William, what are you standing around for? Apologize.
Snapped back to reality by the scolding, William hastily apologized to me.
I'm sorry.
His voice was small and broken, unlike the usual William.
Apologize properly.
At Fred's command, William apologized again, but his voice cracked and was hard to understand. Both Fred and Cameron looked at him with exasperation. I invited the three of them to sit and asked about the purpose of their visit. Fred began by explaining the facts he discovered after our talk over the phone. He seemed drained, a stark contrast to his usual overbearing self. The impact of the contract termination due to William's abusive words had clearly affected him. I felt a bit sorry for him, but his previous high-handedness made it hard to sympathize.
We found out that everything William reported until now was completely false.
Wiping the sweat from his forehead, Fred struggled to push out the words. William had been telling Fred that Cruise Bolts was taking advantage of our long relationship. He claimed we had been making unreasonable demands and had recently started asking for price increases. He said these issues had worsened since the company was passed down to me. He even said that during his last visit, I demanded a price increase, claiming Cruise was supporting Frederick's work. When he brought Cameron along to teach her about sales, I supposedly made those demands. He said that when he rejected these unreasonable demands, I threatened to terminate the contract and delayed the delivery. He apparently said that while he had always been able to secure favorable terms for his company before, this time it wasn't possible.
Believing these reports, I developed a negative impression of your company.
Hanging his head in dismay, he apologized again. William's claim that his words were equivalent to the president's was also a lie. He likely used this as a threat during price negotiations with other subcontractors. Cameron must have known William was lying, which is why she tried to stop him. Even as a new employee, she found it wrong for William to lie just to secure a contract. William must have used the president's name and the threat of contract termination as leverage in all his dealings. That's why all the companies had conceded to his demands, but I refused. William must have been quite flustered when I didn't cave in. He probably thought I would come begging after the meeting if he threatened contract termination. But I didn't contact William, even on the delivery day. William must have been shaken when he waited for the delivery from Cruise Bolts without announcing the contract termination. When the president questioned the lack of delivery, William piled lie upon lie. It's hard to believe an adult would think this way, and I sighed.
After hearing Cameron's account, I finally understood the truth.
As Fred finished speaking, Cameron, who had been silent, apologized.
I'm truly sorry.
Cameron, you didn't.
I was told to keep quiet.
She began explaining, ashamed of her actions as a witness. Cameron felt a sense of crisis that the contract would end due to William's excessive words that day. She advised William to report the situation immediately, but he shouted, "Do you have no pride in Frederick?" and threatened her to keep silent. He assured her that Cruise Bolts would come begging and that deliveries would proceed as if nothing had happened. He even threatened to make her uncomfortable at the company if she reported it. She apologized again for not being able to speak up until Fred asked. Cameron's testimony helped clear up the misunderstanding. I said, but Cameron still looked apologetic. In contrast to William, who sat lifelessly, Cameron's professionalism stood out. Cameron had endured not only verbal abuse questioning her character, but also sexual harassment from William. During Fred's inquiry, she reported all she had endured. I recalled Cameron's disgusted expression when William touched her shoulder during the meeting. She had probably been touched inappropriately so often that her revulsion showed on her face. While I was still angry at Fred's oppressive attitude and William's arrogance, I felt nothing but sympathy for Cameron. As I asked Cameron to raise her head, Fred spoke.
I realize that I haven't been observing my employees' character despite their long service.
His usual high-handedness was gone, and he continued apologizing.
The company's growth made me forget important things.
He emphasized the importance of listening to employees' opinions fairly, regardless of their tenure. He expressed a desire to reflect on his actions in light of this incident. Frederick Construction was not a bad client, but I always felt they looked down on us. If they acknowledged the quality of Cruz Bolt's parts, they would realize our prices were too low. I wanted to be an equal partner with Frederick Construction. William had easily destroyed that hope, and I felt the same condescension from Fred during our call. That's why I firmly rejected Frederick Construction's request. Accepting their demands would have kept Cruz Bolts in a subservient position. In hindsight, courageously accepting the contract termination was the right decision.
We will take severe disciplinary action against William.
As Fred said this, William, who had been silent until now, suddenly jumped up like a spring.
You're kidding. What did I do wrong?
At this stage, what could William possibly say? The sudden outburst left the three of us bewildered. William began listing various contracts to show how much he had served the company over the years.
I pushed hard for that contract and others too.
Hearing this, I was convinced that he had been treating other subcontractors with the same arrogance.
You idiot. Subcontractors must be bound by trust.
Fred shouted, and William fell silent. But I thought that even Fred had recently been looking down on subcontractors. That's likely why an employee like William emerged. Corporate arrogance is a frightening thing. Looking at Fred and William, that's what I thought. William was later dismissed for disciplinary reasons. Initially, they suggested he resign voluntarily. However, when William protested, it became an issue with the board, leading to his dismissal.
I wanted to be lenient since he had worked for us for so long.
Fred told me this later. He came to visit with compensation for the trouble William had caused us over the years. I initially refused, but to avoid any conflict, I eventually accepted it. I hope this incident helps Frederick Construction to transform into a company that avoids corporate arrogance. I distributed the compensation from Fred as a bonus to my employees. Cameron is using the harassment she endured from William as motivation to work harder. If Frederick Construction can become a company where young employees like Cameron can thrive, I would like to continue doing business with them. When Cameron came to greet us as the new contact person, we decided to resume the contract, though not to the same extent as before. However, if they show signs of corporate arrogance again, well, I hope it doesn't come to that. Cruz Bolts continues to maintain an open and communicative corporate culture, fostering good relationships with our clients. But who knows when a mindset like Frederick Construction's might emerge. If Fred and William had approached their work with sincerity, this incident would never have happened. Success is certainly wonderful, but it also carries the risk of losing oneself. I want to use the turmoil at Frederick Construction as a lesson and further develop Cruz Bolts into an even more attractive company.